If you've ever wondered who the inspiration was for characters like Norman Bates in Psycho, or Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, you're going to learn today. It was based on a real person, and, maybe the characters in those TV shows and the movies were exaggerated a little bit, but the real story is just as crazy. It's Our Weird World.
Our Weird World.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and today we are going to talk about Ed Gein, the inspiration behind all of those characters I mentioned at the start, and also the reason that a lot of people just take jabs at Wisconsin for being just a weird place. Ed Gein, the real story, is not a lot like, the characters that he inspired in the movies, but instead they just took several elements from his story, a lot of the creepiest elements. And let's just jump into it. It's story time. Ed Gein was born on August 27th, 1906 in La Crosse County, Wisconsin. It's right there on the border of the Mississippi River between, border of Minnesota along the Mississippi River. His father was a raging alcoholic. He worked various jobs, even as a carpenter, an insurance salesman, so many more things, but he was never able to really keep stable employment because he was drinking so much. At one point, Gein's father owned a local grocery store, but eventually sold that and moved to a 155-acre farm outside the town of Plainfield. Ed's mother, Augusta, took the move out to the farm as just a way for the family to have a fresh start and just to make sure that Ed and his brother Henry were raised the right way. And by the right way, I mean very religiously. She prohibited anyone from having any influence on the boys other than her. And she really only let them leave the house long enough to go to school. Every afternoon when they got back from school, Augusta would sit the boys down and select the most graphic verses from the Old Testament. And trust me, there are plenty. And she would preach to them about the natural immorality that existed in the world. She also told them that every other woman on the planet except for her was a dirty whore and just an instrument of the devil. And obviously that had a big impact on both Ed and Henry, but in two completely different ways. And we'll get to that in just a second. When Ed's father died in 1940, Ed and his brother worked several jobs around Plainfield to help cover the family's living expenses, because Augusta wasn't working. She was just at home, keeping up the house. While Ed just hung on every word his mother told him, Henry was a little more suspicious of, the Bible stuff. Henry began dating a single mother, probably just to throw it in his mom's face, and planned to move in with her before they got married, which, no, that's bad. Henry even tried to convince Ed, how nutty and over-religious their mother was, but Ed was like, no way, man, Mom is totally right. All women are the devil. Mom is an angel. And all the other women, including your whore of a girlfriend, is the devil. Anyway, 4 years later, Henry unexpectedly died while the two brothers were burning overgrowth on their property. When police found Henry's body, they noticed that he had several bruises on his head, but officially listed Henry's cause of death as asphyxiation. They dismissed any foul play, and, the case was never investigated. No one really ever thought that Ed had anything to do with it, but, it's odd. To make things worse, Augusta had a severe stroke shortly after Henry's death that left her partially paralyzed. And Ed dropped everything that he was doing, and he decided to devote the rest of his life to taking care of her. When one day, when the two went over to a neighbor's house to buy some straw, they saw the neighbor beating a dog to death, which is unfortunate. When a woman ran from the house telling the man to stop, Augusta lost her mind. And not because the dog was getting unnecessarily beaten, but because the man and the woman weren't married. And her reaction to this, and just the way she freaked out about a man and a woman living together unmarried, caused her to freak her out so much that she had another stroke right there. And ultimately she died a year later. Augusta's death devastated Ed. She was the only person that he had in his life since, his mother had banned anyone else from having anything to do with him. And she was the only person that he had ever loved. After the funeral, Ed went back home. He boarded up all the rooms in the house that his mother used the most, including the living room and the entire upstairs. Obviously, he didn't board up the kitchen because he still needed to eat. And that's not like a stereotypical women belong in the kitchen joke. Like that's just the reality of it. Like, if you got offended at that, you just suck as a human being and you're not thinking rationally. Like, women, especially in the 1940s, they spent a lot of time in the kitchen. All right. Women today spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I don't even know why I'm arguing with myself on this with imaginary people that are fake outraged by a thing I just said that made a lot of sense. I don't know. I hate this planet sometimes. Ed continued working just to make ends meet, to keep the farm. And in his spare time, he started reading a lot of these true crime magazines, and he became especially interested in stories about cannibals and the Nazis. He also tried to become more social. He started inviting other people into his life as a way to replace his mother, whether it was, other neighbors or like a local bartender who was, more than willing to listen to Ed's sob stories. On November 16th, 1957, Bernice Warden, owner of a hardware store in Plainfield, mysteriously disappeared. And when Bernice's son and Plainfield's deputy sheriff Frank Warden entered the store, he found the cash register open and bloodstains on the floor. Now, Frank knew that Ed had been there the night before and had told Bernice that he would come back the next day to buy some antifreeze. And he knew this because the receipt was the last thing that was written on the counter. Later that night, Ed was arrested at a nearby grocery store, and mainly because Bernice's decapitated body was discovered in a shed on the farm. Her body was found hanging upside down with a crossbar at her ankles. Her wrists were tied with ropes, and her torso had been gutted like a deer. And then, probably because they had to, but immediately wished they hadn't, the deputies went inside the farmhouse. Inside, they found trash cans, lampshades, and chairs wrapped in human skin. Like, I love how these stories just feel like they just take a really quick turn into insanity. Ed's bedposts were topped with human skulls. Other human skulls were being used as bowls. Bernice's heart, they found Bernice's heart sitting in a plastic bag in front of the stove. Officers opened the closet, and this is so weird. Officers opened the closet and pulled out a corset made from a female torso. They also found leggings made from actual human legs and several masks made from female faces. They pulled out a shoebox containing not one, not two, not three, but 9 vulva. And if that wasn't strange enough, they found a belt made of human nipples. That's so weird and gross. When investigators finally found the ability, because they were just shocked. All of these nice Wisconsin people, Wisconsin people are so nice. Just, hey there, welcome to Wisconsin. We got some cheese there for you. Oh, what's this? A belt made of nipples? What is going on here? That's my bad Wisconsin accent. When they finally questioned Ed about everything they'd found in the house, Ed gladly explained that during the period between 1947 and 1952, he made up to 40 trips in the middle of the night to a few different graveyards around Plainfield. He found recently buried bodies that reminded him of his mother, exhumed them, and then took them home to improve his wardrobe and decor. So, like, come on, guys, I'm not a murderer. I didn't murder all these people. I just went to graveyards and dug them up. So they were recently dead. He explained that basically after his mother died, he wanted to create a woman suit so that he could literally become his mother. And that's just a level of mental illness that I don't think any of us can really comprehend. Investigators asked if he had sex with the bodies, which is obviously the next logical question in this investigation. And Ed denied that he was that messed up, but not because he didn't want to have sex with them, but because the corpses just smelled too bad. He just couldn't find it within himself to, because you got to have good smells when you're making the sexes. And with more evidence than they really needed to have at that point, Ed was sent off to trial. 5 days after his arrest, Ed was declared unfit by reason of insanity, of course, to stand trial, and was sent to the Mendota State Hospital. Nearly 11 years later, Ed was declared mentally stable and sent for retrial. A week later, he was found guilty in the death of Bernice Warden, but later found not guilty when they considered his mental state during the entire process. He was, however, sentenced to spend the rest of his life in a mental hospital where he eventually died on July 26th, 1984. So that's it. So if you've ever, wondered how people come up with these crazy characters, or if you've ever heard someone just kind of rip on people from Wisconsin for, doing weird stuff to dead bodies, this is why. Ed Gein, had that, mommy issues to the fullest extent possible. So let's see what we learned.
What did we learn?
Number one, whether it's your mom or your preacher or whoever, if they start telling you that an entire group of people, with the exception of themselves, is really bad, and that you should stay away from them, they're probably not telling you the truth. If someone, like, outside of like really obvious things like, heroin is bad, or, I don't know, don't stick your head in the tiger's mouth, or something, like all tigers will bite your head off if you do that, but like mundane stuff like, all women are bad, or all Jews are bad. Like, if you got someone telling you stuff like that, probably don't listen to them, because they're probably insane. Number two, apparently you can make a human belt, or you can make a belt out of human nipples. I just, like, part of me wants to see what that looks like just from a practical standpoint. Just like the craftsmanship that it must have taken to not only cut off said nipples, but then to fashion them together, because that takes skill. Like that, it takes surgical skill to a degree. It takes like some sort of sewing skill, I'm guessing. And then you've also probably got to have some sort of eye for fashion and design, to make a belt, was it, like, I just want to know. And maybe there are pictures out there that would tell me this, but like, was it a leather belt with like the nips glued on to the leather? Or was it like all just skin with, just nipples all around it? And then what was the buckle like? Was it a metal buckle? Or was it like one of those things where you slip the belt through the loop or something? I don't know. But, oh God, I have more questions about this than I'm really not proud of. have. Anyway, number 3, that was a weird tangent there. Number 3, contrary to popular belief, all of the characters that were inspired by Ed Gein, he was not a serial killer. He wasn't really this deranged psychopath. Like, he was just a mentally ill man who loved his mama probably way too much and then wanted to become her by digging up corpses and making a bodysuit out of their skin. Like, that's weird, but he wasn't really a danger to society. He wasn't like some Hannibal Lecter dude who is like out to murder everyone. Like, he murdered a couple of people, at least one for sure, maybe a couple more. But Ed Gein really was not the monster that the characters he inspired were. Next week on Our Weird World, we're going to get another paranormal story, a mystery, the Dyatlov Pass incident. This happened in Russia, where a group of people just mysteriously died. And there's not a lot of evidence to give a clear answer as to why. But just a really strange story, one that a lot of very well-adjusted, highly educated conspiracy theorists, I say that with the most sarcasm I can muster, have come forward to offer several wild theories as to what actually happened. So find out all about that next week. And as always, thank you for listening. Tell all your friends and keep it weird.